Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Danush Dinesh. I work for an organization called Climate. So, this might be a new organization for many of you because we are new. We've only been operational for 3 weeks. So, Climate is a new think and do tank which focuses on food and climate issues. And we were launched at COP26. We are hosted by the Netherlands Food Partnership, which is the one of the hosts of this event, together with the ICRA program. ICRA is a program funded by the World Bank, which focuses on accelerating the impacts of CGIR's climate research for Africa. So the three co-hosts for this event are Climate, the Netherlands Food Partnership, and ICRA. So I will be your moderator today. And before we rush into the program, I would just wanted to say Happy New Year while it's still January, and also a happy anniversary. And that's the reason we are actually here today, because today is the first anniversary of the Climate Adaptation Summit. So exactly 1 year ago, on 25th of January, the Netherlands hosted the first of its kind Climate Adaptation Summit. So it was only 4 months after I moved to the Netherlands, and it was really great to see that excitement around the summit. And it was for the first time bringing attention to the issues around climate adaptation. It was bringing heads of states, heads of companies all together to get transformative action done. And a big component of the summit was on food and agriculture. And this was really exciting for me because I've been working in food and agriculture for the past 8 years, and it was really one of the pillars of the summit. And we saw lots of ambitious commitments being made, and that momentum stayed on, and it culminated in COP26 in Glasgow. So, the purpose of this event is to take stock of what was achieved in the past year from the Climate Adaptation Summit to COP26. Here are a few of the highlights that have been achieved, the progress that has been made. And then think about, we are at the beginning of this year. Where do we want to be at the end of this year when we will all meet, hopefully in person, in Egypt for COP27? So while COP26 was about ambition, COP27 is about implementation and action. So we will be hearing from the Egyptian presidency on the way forward to COP27. So that's the purpose of this event. But just some housekeeping: you will be watching this event either through LinkedIn or through YouTube, and there is an option for you to post your comments, your questions in the live stream chat. So do that throughout the event. My colleague Reese is monitoring that, and he will be picking out key questions and comments, and we'll go back to the speakers on that. So that's on housekeeping. So now I just want to dive straight into the content. So, firstly, I'd like to welcome Myrtle Dancer, who's the executive director of the Netherlands Food Partnership. And the NFP is one of the co hosts of this event. And they've been really leading by developing impact coalitions for food systems transformation. And I'm going to hand over to Myrtle to welcome you all and give us a sense of where they are at in terms of advancing this food systems transformation agenda. Over to you, Myrtle.
Thank you so much, Danush, and also good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to all of you participating online to this great event. And indeed, we built on this great and very interesting climate adaptation summit that happened exactly 1 year ago here in the Netherlands. Let me help also to recall some important highlights of that specific summit. Um, Actually, until 2021, food systems, how we produce, gather, transport, process, consume, and dispose food, have always been a bit sidelined by climate negotiators. And that is probably because though food remains the universal source of life, the way it's produced often comes at unsustainable costs to the climate, the environment, water resources, and human health and well-being. Probably the reason why it has been sidelined is because until recently, agriculture and agri-food systems were mostly perceived as being responsible for emissions rather than part of the solution. So, if we can recall the summit that happened exactly 1 year ago here in the Netherlands, then important ambitions that the different parties that attended the meeting agreed on regarding agriculture and climate were facilitating climate-informed agriculture advisories for 100 million farmers, Africa improved foods, and also setting up a new climate fund to build resilience of small scale producers. And last year was also an extraordinary year because besides the COP26, also the first ever United Nations Food System Summit was organized in September. So from there, the special envoy for this specific summit, Dr. Agnes Kalibata, also attended the COP26 in Glasgow, and she called for specific attention to food and agriculture by ensuring the COP27 in 2022 with a specific focus on food systems. And that's why we're also all here together, because, yeah, we would like to use the first part of this year also to see where we can speed up, boost up, facilitate certain processes to work towards that result. The intersection between climate and food is, of course, profound, and we all know that. If we do not address food systems driven climate emissions, we simply cannot make our 1.5% Celsius target. And if we don't, food systems will suffer the most. So, for many of us, postponing this conversation is a luxury we really can't afford. In the COP26, several sessions were featured that attended food related issues. But we also know that in these meetings, there was an absence of representatives of member states in the discussions and commitments. So we would like to see in the next climate conference that this will change. Without any urgent action on climate change, an additional 100 million people in Africa could be pulled into extreme poverty in the next 8 seasons. That is more than 10 million people every year to 2030. 7 out of 10 people at the same time in sub-Saharan Africa work in the food system, for whom financing adaptation and mitigation future climate impact is of utmost urgency. Timely attention to the food system will yield real-life solutions to avert further damage to the environment and create opportunities for local economic development, food and nutrition security. At the same time, research suggests transforming food systems could release back the 12 trillion US dollars the world spends on the hidden cost of food. Redirecting some of these funds could prevent further damage to the environment and to the health of the people, and it could instead help rally more pledges to adaptation financing as called by the member states and leaders during the COP in Glasgow. Less than 2% of adaptation financing reaches vulnerable African farmers and small and medium-sized enterprises in food systems living the brunt of a changing climate. As part of the 2015 Paris Agreement, world leaders actually committed to jointly raise 100 billion US dollars annually by 2020. The pledge is yet to be achieved, with the highest amount raised being 79.6 billion in 2019, but with projections showing that the target could be achieved in 3 years with more commitments from key stakeholders. Nevertheless, very important outcomes of the COP26 have been the Global Methane Pledge, Aim for Climate Initiative, fast-tracking climate solutions from CGIAR, gene bank collections, Climate Shot, Coronivia joint work on agriculture. So let's use this event also to discuss where we stand with these agendas and what is needed to bring them forward. Bring them forward because this year the COP27 will be organized in Egypt. The COP27 will be focused on food systems, and that connects the dots for the world. I emphasize the urgency of action required to address the gaps in ambition across mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage, and finance, and the importance of responding to the best available science in this respect. Dr. Kalibata noted that elevating food systems to the central topic of COP27, hosted by Egypt, will present an opportunity to have some of the difficult conversations needed in the world food systems. Climate change is real for Egyptian farmers. Last spring, there was a heat wave when mangoes were in bloom. Local farmers have expressed their concern to our partners on the effect this has on the setting of fruit and thus the harvest. Also, pests and diseases act different than normal, and optimal growing seasons change. Higher evaporation with more water scarcity means higher risk of soil salinization. Innovation, farmer entrepreneurship, and diversification are essential for farmers to respond to these unpredictable changes, to adapt to climate change. Investing in soil health and mixed cropping systems with applications of compost and animal manure is an integrated way of managing the risk of pests and diseases and using natural resilience. Also, seeds are important for resilience. Heat tolerance, disease resistance, salt tolerance, water efficiency are increasingly important traits beside productivity. Breeding portfolios must be diverse to respond to farmers' agroecological reality. With the Collective Impact Coalition CNL, we are working with private and public partners on improving access to climate resilient seeds. This year, the initiative will expand from Nigeria and Ethiopia to Egypt. Integrated farming systems are, however, very knowledge intensive. A top down government led planning, research, and extension will not manage to respond to farmers' knowledge needs. This requires co innovation between farmers, researchers, agribusiness, and development partners with public sector support. In the Netherlands, we call this the Dutch diamond, but we recommend actually such a quadruple helix approach anywhere in the world. Dutch and Egyptian partners are taking first steps together to learn and apply lessons on climate smart agriculture. In the Netherlands, for instance, Wageningen Farm of the Future and Egypt's second farm in Bilbais could inspire a network of lighthouse farms. Here is where the Netherlands Food Partnership comes in. The Netherlands Food Partnership is a convening platform that supports the development of so-called collective impact coalition and facilitates the interface between science and practice on food system transformation processes. ClimeEat is one of the collective impact coalitions we help to accelerate its development into an independent think and do tank on climate and food. The road to a sustainable food system in Egypt and beyond is unknown. It is a road we must discover together. Young professionals, women and men have an important role to play. They have a direct interest to build a sustainable future, are not afraid to try new things to build on the work and experience of previous generations. We must focus on the fact that this is a global event taking place not only in Egypt but in Africa, and we must see it's a golden opportunity to engage different African stakeholders on climate, as many of the promises made in Glasgow will be played out in developing country regions like Africa. I wish us all an inspiring event.
Thank you, Myrtle, for those very compelling remarks. And what I really take away from that is, there's a lot happening, and we should be proud of that, of course, the progress made. But there is a lot more that needs to happen. And the common thread that I found was about equity, among African farmers and, challenges that they're facing, poverty, food security issues, and how we can bring such complex issues to the table at COP27. And that is exactly what we'd seek to do working with NFP over the next year. So thank you so much. And maybe to continue that mode of inspiration, we have our next speaker, who's Martin van Nieuwkoop, who's a global director for agriculture and food at the World Bank. So across all these important events that Myrtle mentioned, from the Climate Adaptation Summit to the Food System Summit to COP26, the World Bank has been a common thread as well. At the CAS, they announced this ICRA project. So they're putting the money into transforming food systems. At the Food System Summit and COP, they really advanced the policy reform as well as innovation agendas. So over to you, Martin, to hear from you on where are we now, 1 year from the Climate Adaptation Summit, from your perspective, and where should we be going?
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Dennis, and very good to see you. And greetings to everybody from Washington, D.C. I think in the 10 minutes I have, I think I would like to kind of, as you say, Dennis, present a kind of a retrospective review and overview on the progress on agriculture and food that we have seen. I mean, since the landmark Climate Adaptation Summit that happened last year, organized by the government of the Netherlands. And second, also kind of to provide a forward look on the priorities for this agenda in 2022 from the World Bank's perspective. Let me start by saying that at the summit last year, I think we witnessed a very strong commitment for climate adaptation actions, I mean, particularly in the food and agriculture sectors. And since then, we've also seen significant progress with various stakeholders, including work on strengthening incentives, I mean, towards food systems transformation, reinforcing and establishing systems for innovation, enhancing institutions, I mean, including at the World Bank, I mean, to further advance key priorities of the climate change agenda, and scaling up investments in agriculture and food with significant adaptation and mitigation co-benefits. So let me go briefly talk about those 4 I's. I mean, incentives, innovation, institutions, and investment. And let's start with incentives. And it was already mentioned by the previous speaker. Now, so deploying the right mix of policy and financial incentives is crucial to reduce the estimated $12 trillion in hidden social, economic, and environmental costs associated with the current food systems and build climate resilience. The bank, as you mentioned, Danush, has zeroed in on this agenda with new analysis in recent months. In September, we worked very closely with Agnes Kalibata at the UN Food Systems Summit. I mean, the World Bank, IFPRI, and the Food and Land Use Coalition presented a new food finance architecture, which was very well received. And it focuses on how to optimize public spending and mobilize private capital for global food system transformation. At the COP26, the UK presidency, the World Bank, and the Just Rural Transition Initiative, launched the policy action agenda for the transition to sustainable agriculture. And this sets out the pathways and the actions that countries can take to repurpose public policies and support to food and agriculture to deliver climate and nature-based solutions and outcome and enable a just rural transition. And next week, on February 2nd, together with IFPRI, we will be launching a new report that presents options. We did some extensive modeling here about to transform agriculture and food systems to repurposing agriculture policies and support. Where can we get the biggest bang for this repurposed public support to food system? This is what this new report is about. And we think that now is the time, for banks, investors, development institutions, companies, farmers, and governments, to shift financial resources out of the high carbon, unequal, extractive food assets into inclusive, climate smart, circular business models, that benefit the people and the planet. So those are a few reflections about incentives. Let me move now to innovation. Agriculture innovation and the use of technology by farmers, especially in developing countries, we think need to increase dramatically in order to eliminate poverty, meet the rising demand for food, and build climate resilience, and all of this in simultaneous fashion. At the COP26 and further to the policy action agenda that I mentioned earlier, 26 countries also pledged to support the global action agenda on transforming agricultural innovation. So we strongly welcome this progress and continue to work with our partners to mainstream the agreed action. As you said, Danush, at the World Bank and during last year's Climate Adaptation Summit, we also announced the Accelerated Impacts of CGIAR Climate Research for Africa project, or ICRA project, as we call it. This is a $60 million operation which builds on impactful CGIAR climate research to provide better access to climate information services and validated climate smart agriculture technologies in several African countries. And since then, CGIAR research scientists, other academics, and national and regional institutions have made significant progress in developing and testing climate smart agriculture and climate information services tools and methods to partnerships, for example, in Kenya, Zambia, Mali, Senegal, and Ghana. Also very important, and definitely last but not least, 2022 marks the beginning of One CGIAR. One CGIAR is a dynamic reformulation, so to say, of CGIAR's partnerships, knowledge, assets, and global presence, aiming for greater integration and impact in the face of the interdependent challenges facing today's world, with climate change being a top priority. The World Bank has been a long advocate of One CGIAR, and we have strongly supported this process. Let's move on to institutions. Accelerating climate progress on the ground, also requires strong institutional setup, commitments, and effective delivery mechanisms. When we look at the World Bank, in 2021, we adapted a new climate change action plan in which we committed, to increase our climate finance target to 35% of total commitments over the next 5 years, align our financing flows with the goals of the Paris Agreement, and achieve results that integrate climate and development. And the new climate change action plan prioritizes adaptation and emphasizes 5 key systems transitions, with agriculture, food, water, and land use being one of them. So agriculture and food is now really recognized, also as the previous speaker was saying, as part of the climate action agenda to address the climate emergency. The World Bank also added the country climate development reports to its set of core diagnostics. These reports provide important data and diagnostics to identify and prioritize actions that reduce greenhouse gas emissions and build adaptation and resilience. And we're already rolling out these reports in 25 countries. We've also set up a new institutional arrangement to the Early Warning for Early Action Food Security Hub, and that assists World Bank teams and partners in gathering evidence for more proactive and more targeted responses to food security, which often occur, of course, as a result of climate disaster. Now, finally, a few reflections about investments. Of course, we still need many more investments that bring tangible and sustained results in adaptation and resilience, while accelerating mitigation efforts and system transitions. So at the World Bank, we have been supporting investment in climate-smart agriculture using our strong track record as the largest provider in development finance for agriculture. We had about $5 billion in new lending by the Agriculture and Food Global Practice in the last financial year, which ended June 30th, 2021. And this lending generated almost 60% of climate co-benefits. So the agriculture and food portfolio at the bank is much ahead of the bank's overall average, which is close to 35%. And this also makes the World Bank the biggest provider of development finance for climate-smart agriculture in the world. In this effort, we use innovative climate-smart agriculture investment planning approaches to help countries prioritize the most impactful and cost-effective climate-smart technology investments. And the last fiscal year, and including the fiscal year that started on July 1st last year, several of the World Bank's agriculture projects delivered record climate adaptation and mitigation co-benefits across the various regions. So let me provide a few examples here, Danush. For example, in Bangladesh, we are supporting a large-scale climate-smart agriculture and water management investment that help build resilience for farmers. In DRC, a new $500 million national agriculture development program introduces various climate-smart practices across value chains, to technical assistance and finance to medium and small enterprises. In Kazakhstan, we are supporting first of its kind climate-smart livestock innovations. In South Sudan, an emergency locust response project targets immediate responses to the locust crisis while building long-term resilience. And then recently in Argentina, we are introducing, very interestingly, comprehensive risk management in agriculture and the food sector to the Climate Intelligence and Inclusive Agri-Food Systems project that we financed to the tune of $400 million. Now these are just a few examples of the bank's portfolio, which consists of 150 projects in agriculture and food, with a total commitment of about $22 billion. So I hope this has given you a sense of the progress that we achieved last year. The work that we have done together in a short amounts of time, boost our aspirations to do even more in the coming years, which is very much needed. So now let me conclude with a few words about the year ahead, looking forward, a year for urgent action to address the climate emergency. So in line with the new climate change action plan, the World Bank is currently developing and piloting new methodologies to assess the alignments of its operations with the Paris Agreement, with the aim to have all our new operations Paris aligned starting July 1st, 2023. In the agriculture and food global practice at the bank, we are initiating analytical work on decarbonization of the agri-food system and recarbonization of landscapes. I think this also will be a very exciting space to watch. And together with partners and countries, we will continue to advance the efforts to repurpose agriculture support to a variety of actions, including coordination with the G7 and the G20 presidencies in 2022. And at the country level, I mean, we hope to expand the pool of countries that join the policy action agenda. Our new Food Systems 2030 multi-donor trust funds, I mean, stand also ready to provide tailored policy advice and analytical products on this journey. Toward food systems that support healthy people, a healthy planet, and a healthy economy. So I very much look forward to the rest of the session and to hear more about how we can further collaborate and galvanize recent commitments and other actions, especially in the lead up to the COP27 in Egypt this year. So thank you very much, and back to you, Danush.
Thanks, Martin, for that really comprehensive opening remarks. And what I really liked about that was all the examples that you gave, because it was not just talk; it was walking the talk. And from Bangladesh to ICRA, so many different examples, and all that in such a short period of time. So I would actually add one more I to the four I's of incentives, institutions, innovation, and investments that you mentioned is the implementation. So you've also demonstrated with implementation how we can advance all four I's. And I think for the next COP, which is the implementation COP, we can bring these together under that implementation umbrella. So really, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your views on the way forward. But let's bring stakeholders together to implement these successes that you've had. And now, with that, I would like to go to the panel. And yeah, one of the things that Myrtle mentioned, and maybe it's another I, is on inclusion, and it's also about not just about including people with different incomes and from different regions, but also including young people, and inclusion in terms of gender diversity and so on. And so today we have my colleague Doris Vertigal from Climate, and I've been working with Doris for more than a year now. And she's a young student at Wageningen University, where she studies climate studies. And alongside that, she's been working on youth engagement at the Climate Adaptation Summit, at the pre-COP, at the COP. So Doris, from your perspective, from all that you've heard and all that you've done, what have you seen in the last year in terms of youth engagement, and would you like to share your reflections?
Yes, thanks so much, Danus. And like you said, so over the last year, I've been working for the CGR research program on climate change, agriculture, and food security called CCAFs, where I've gotten the chance to lead several youth events. And I mean, how cool is that you have, as a young person, can lead that? So the first event, like you mentioned, was the Youth for Climate Adaptation conference, which was held in Groningen, where I'm originally also from. And the outcome of this youth conference was also delivered to the actual Climate Adaptation Summit a few days later. So that gave a very clear goal. And later on that year, together with some other young colleagues, we organized an event for pre-COP last September. And at pre-COP also, youth was included as part of setting the agenda. And we used this event to support a new launched pledge called Act for Food, Act for Change. It was launched last April, and it aims to bring all youth voices together by having them sign a simple pledge that urges all people to act for a sustainable food system. So these are just two examples of how more attention has been paid to youth over the last year in the international food and climate arena. And there are more examples. So over the last year, I've seen youth inclusion evolve, also nationally and locally, within businesses and NGOs and governments, also, for example, at the Food Systems Summit. And this is, of course, a great development, but it has also caused for some frustration among young people, weirdly enough, that I know, because they have the feeling that youth inclusion has become sort of a tick box and that they're not actually heard. So therefore, I do believe for the coming year that we should try to move from youth inclusion to youth appreciation and really listening to what we have to say. Because intrinsically, youth indeed do have less experience and we do have less knowledge, but we can bring other very valuable skills to the table, like new ideas, radical ambition, asking the hard questions, but also increasing the outreach to the younger generation that will have to live with the decisions that are made today.
Thank you, Doris. It was really inspiring. And so let's move from youth empowerment to youth appreciation and even beyond that as far as we can go. But Doris reminded us, ask us the hard questions and please continue to ask. We can see some of the questions coming in the comments, but please put your questions in the live stream question box. But now I want to move to another I that Martine mentioned, and that was on innovation. And in the lead up to COP26, the UK really brought a focus on innovation. So the Transforming Agriculture Innovation for People, Nature and Climate campaign, a COP26 campaign, was launched at the Climate Adaptation Summit by Lord Zach Goldsmith, and it has evolved into this climate shot umbrella framing and brought together lots of different people. So I now turn to Rachel Lambert from the UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, where she leads the agriculture research team. So, Rachel, do you want to tell us about the progress that the campaign has made in the last year, and leading up to the Glasgow breakthroughs? That what has happened on innovation since the Climate Adaptation Summit?
Yeah, thanks, Danush. I think a huge amount's been achieved following the launch of the campaign a year ago. And as we've heard, Glasgow really put agriculture and food systems as a priority for climate change. But really importantly, it also highlighted the critical value of science and innovation in fighting the climate crisis, putting that at the kind of centre of food systems transformation. And as Martine's highlighted, the use of technology needs to increase really dramatically. So what happened at the COP itself? I think firstly we saw world leaders announce a commitment to work together to halt and reverse deforestation and land degradation by 2030. And it's agriculture and the food system, as we know, which is the largest driver of forest loss and has to be part of the solution. And one of the mechanisms to deliver on that is the FACT dialogue, the Forest, Agriculture and Commodity Trade Dialogue. And agriculture research and innovation is an integral part of that roadmap, building on Climate Shot and the work it's done. Secondly, at the COP itself, a Glasgow Innovation Breakthrough Goal on agriculture was launched, again by world leaders, and with the aim of making climate resilient, sustainable agriculture more attractive and widely adopted than unsustainable practices. So making sustainable agriculture technology the go-to choice for farmers everywhere. And the breakthrough agenda aims to accelerate the development of clean technologies and has already collected commitments from a number of countries. Agriculture is the only one of the breakthroughs to address adaptation and resilience as well as mitigation. And Glasgow also saw important financial commitments, including the Agriculture Innovation Mission for Climate, with its early harvest figure of $4 billion, and the One CGIAR, which initiatives like that are going to be so important in underpinning and delivering the Glasgow Breakthrough Goal by 2030. Finally, on Nature Day, we launched the Global Action Agenda itself with support from a number of allies. We're now at over 200 allies, representing commitments from over 20 countries, more than 20 impact investors, a range of international actors, research partners, civil society, all of them making substantial commitments on their own. But I think it's by working together as Climate Shot allies and directing our focus in the near term that we can significantly accelerate progress, including by catalysing investments. So the link between the second I and the third I in agriculture research and innovation, by focusing those investments on delivering demand-driven solutions, which drive productivity and improve resilience, protect nature and limit climate change. And we know from studies that we undertook last year with Climate Shot that governments and the private sector must commit to a doubling of their investments in agriculture, research, innovation and deployment in developing and emerging economies. An additional $15 billion every year will combat climate change and protect nature. And thirdly, by coordinating initiatives and facilitating those partnerships and models which can accelerate and take to scale the kind of technologies that we're talking about, climate resilient, sustainable agriculture technologies. So I think science and innovation are really at the heart of our efforts to tackle the climate and nature crises, and the Global Action Agenda and its allies can really underpin progress in this area. And it really sets out a vision and a set of actions and priority initiatives that we can all get behind, helping contribute to that goal by 2030 of ensuring that sustainable agriculture is the go-to option for farmers everywhere.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for that intervention and really highlighting the role that innovation can play. And what you mentioned at the end about partnerships and models to achieve scale, and we need to have those models rapidly. And I think that's the context in which what Martine mentioned also about ICRA and having those examples of scaling that we can replicate in other regions and other parts of the world. So in that context, I'd like to invite the next panelist, Ana Maria Lobo Guerrero, who's the interim director for ICRA. And Ana Maria, how would you react to that? You're seeing this focus on innovation. It's one of the eyes. Rachel's spoken about the campaign, Climate Shot, taking to scale, and ICRA is all about taking CGR's research in Africa to scale. So how has ICRA advanced in the past year?
Yeah, thank you very much, Danush, for that question. So we just heard Rachel in terms of how Climate Shot campaign made a huge impact on COP26, all these nice things that came out from those discussions. And basically did it by emphasizing a call for more and more focused investment in this end-to-end innovation across food systems. But very, very much considering the importance of the delivery of these innovations, considering these new types of public-private partnerships, and very important, backed by more evidence with more inclusive dialogue. So I'm very, very happy also to see and to hear Martin in terms of the commitment from the World Bank, which is one of the 200 Climate Shot allies to this agenda. And again, projects like ICRA show what this commitment of really thinking seriously about innovation means in practice. As you already heard from Martin, ICRA is all about innovation and reaching scale CGR research. But very important, ICRA would not only accelerate climate-smart agriculture innovation in 6 African countries. Looking beyond that, the way that ICRA will do it, it's really important. ICRA is focusing on exactly the innovation that Climate Shot is asking for. So thinking about knowledge, thinking about partnerships, thinking about gender and social inclusion. And just let me provide some concrete examples of the things that ICRA has been able to deliver on the ground during 2021 in relation to this agenda. Just one example from the many, Ethiopia. So Ethiopia was a really good example where we were able to produce climate agro-advisory products in relation to wheat rust management. But more than the outcome of these advisory products, more interesting than that is the way that they were produced. Basically, what we did was to link the public sector through EDACAS, the Ethiopia's Integrated National Agricultural Data Hub, with the private sector, LERSHA, a mobile application and call center. So by combining these two, we were able to deliver advisory services to wheat farmers during 2021 cropping season. Really interesting example of scale. But then we also had really interesting policy wins during 2021 through our work in ICRA. In Ethiopia, we were able to work with ministries and institutions to contribute to the endorsement of the Ethiopian National Framework for Climate Services with its implementation strategy. And this could sound like something little, but it's huge for Ethiopia because this framework and this strategy is going to guide the partnerships, the co-development and the coordination of climate services in Ethiopia. So really interesting policy win from our contribution through ICRA. And then let me just finish with West Africa. During 2021, through ICRA, we were able to sign very relevant contracts with important partners: AgriMed as the Regional Climate Prediction Center in Africa, and CORAF as the Regional Agricultural Research Network. And these partnerships are so important because the idea is that through them, during 2022, we're going to be able to enhance and upscale climate information services through considering this cross-regional spillover and South-South knowledge exchange. So really interesting how these innovative partnerships are helping us to reach scale and how this was materialized in the activities that we were able to accomplish during 2021 in ICRA. Back to you, Danush.
Thank you, Anna Maria. That's really inspiring to see action on the ground and research getting scaled with these models of partnership. But you also mentioned that important role that the public and private sector can play linking together. And so I want to move on to our next speaker who's looking at the private sector led action. So I'd like to introduce Victoria de Bourbon de Palme, so who leads the food transformation work at the World Benchmarking Alliance. And they've looked at 350 of the biggest food and agriculture companies in the world. And your benchmark was one of the highlights of last year, Victoria. So can you tell us a bit about how companies are doing in terms of the private sector is doing in terms of this transformational ambition? And Martin talked about incentives and investments. So what is your take?
Thanks, Tanush, and really great that you're organizing this event, because I think this is exactly what we need. You know, we can't have events every just annually or every 5 years taking stock on where we are, but we really need to keep the pressure on and just to check in with each other where we are is I think very, very important. What we've seen in our analysis, fortunately, although perhaps not surprisingly, is that the private sector is not there yet by far. We lack targets, so about 50% of companies don't even have target setting on these really important matters. So we looked at environmental topics, but also social inclusion, improving the resilience of farmers, and nutritional components. But what was very encouraging to see that there's a margin at the top. It's about 6% of companies. So it's about 20 odd companies that in many different fields do have leading practices. And again, it's not just about setting a target, but it's about how they are implementing it, how they are actually translating it into their business on a day-to-day basis. So what we looked at, we zoomed a bit in. I'm so inspired by all the local projects that were mentioned here today and their ambition to scale, because that's exactly what also private sector should be hearing about. How can they implement this but across the board, not just to have a pet project on the side, which they're very proud of, but things should be done at a larger scale, at big scale. Of course, we don't fully know yet, perhaps, the impact numbers or which practices are best, but we're learning as we go, and the urgency is there. We can't wait until the data and the research is completely solidified on what measures can be best done. So I would what my message here today is really to share those types of data and those types of projects and to work collectively. And I'm super inspired by the collectives that have been mentioned, including investors, including NGOs, including business platforms, but also about these platforms like this to tell this to the world, to tell this to each other. I also want to give a shout out that all the work that we do at the World Benchmarking Alliance is really freely available for everyone. So it contains the data, it contains the analysis, but it's also about the methodology, so about how we've assessed companies. And in that, there's a really interesting example that the methodology is also there for others really to use, because we have looked at global data. But of course, really national data is very important as well for companies and national governments to keep track of progress. And we see a very good, interesting example in India that is going to pilot a food systems benchmark nationally based upon the methodology of the World Benchmarking Alliance. So get in touch and let's get a move on, because we have a lot of work ahead of us.
Thank you, Victoria. That was super inspiring. And let's certainly keep the pressure on to ensure an ambitious COP27. But you're not going yet. So I want to dive a bit deeper on what you've mentioned about collective action and bringing people together. And we're proud to be an ally of WBA. So, what are your plans around bringing collectives together in this year leading to COP27?
Yes, that's also something that we're just hoping to really contribute and facilitate to. I mean, we have an alliance of almost 300 organizations, multi-stakeholder, from investors to NGOs, and what we're keen to do is really bring the knowledge of data, but those stakeholder knowledge together, and have NGOs speak with investors and really put the pressure on for companies on what does sustainable agriculture look like, and how does that translate in every parts of the value chain. We've heard the importance about the seeds industry. We also have a benchmark specifically tailored on the access to seeds for smallholder farmers and what big seed providers are doing on that front. But it's also about the retailers, about sustainable sourcing and how can they contribute? What are the important criteria that they should be looking out for? And we just want to consolidate and really bring a clear call to action to companies. And if we're 300 stakeholders having 300 different messages, that doesn't help. But if we know about each other's actions and we can somehow synchronize the collective call and need that, and the ask that we have from companies, then hopefully that will make a difference and result into real action and especially impact for people.
Thank you, Victoria, and really looking forward to working with you to develop that collective call and articulate that in the lead up to COP27. But maybe moving on to you, Anna Maria, we've heard from you what ICRA has achieved, and Myrtle mentioned, some of the challenges she's seeing in the African perspective, and this COP is the African COP. And how do you see ICRA working this year in the lead up to COP27?
Yeah, thank you very much, Danush. So let me start by saying that we have a huge opportunity in front of us with this upcoming COP. This is certainly the Africa's COP, and I'm sure that agriculture will be very, very high in the agenda. And considering such an important and critical sector for African economies and societies. So ICRA's vision is that through our research, through our science and partnerships, we are going to be able to inform and inspire delegates that are going to have really interesting discussions in Egypt for implementation, as you mentioned. So some examples of our vision, how do we see that the activities that are going to be implemented in ICRA during 2022 can inform and inspire these discussions that are going to happen in November in Egypt? So one of these examples is our partnership with the African Enterprise Challenge Fund. So this is a matchmaking platform that basically combines stakeholders from the entire ecosystem to facilitate partnerships and investments in African agriculture. The idea is that ICRA, through these partnerships, is going to be able to develop a pipeline of bankable innovations in food systems through joint challenge calls. So really interesting how we're going to be able to have those projects that are very interesting from a perspective of building resilience in Africa, but very interesting from an investor perspective. Another example, concrete examples of the things that we want to bring into COP27 to inspire conversations in Zambia. In Zambia, ICRA will be working with Zambia's first technology and innovation hub and a small and medium enterprise engagement platform. This platform, basically, what it will do is to convene a matchmaking dialogue to link the SMEs to the needed partners. So again, being able to connect this bundling, connecting supply and demand ideas from SMEs to people that are interested in funding these ideas. The focus of the work of these SMEs is going to be on climate information services and climate smart agricultural packages that can be implemented under African contexts. Thank you, Danush.
Thanks, Anna Maria. Really excited and looking forward to working with you as well and bringing together your work as well in the lead up to COP27. But I now want to turn to Rachel. And Victoria made that call for collective action and the Climate Shot campaign and the Glasgow Breakthroughs. You're bringing together lots of people in this space as well, where there's more than 200 allies. So what are your plans in building on that momentum created in the lead up to COP26 and build on that?
Yeah, I think we've got a fantastic opportunity to build that momentum and really focus on delivery through the COP27. I'm excited to hear what we're going to hear about directions from Egypt on that. Just to highlight a couple of points, follow up on the agriculture breakthrough goal. I think the priorities for us advancing that through this year are to build momentum on that, so that it's consistent with the other breakthroughs, it's complete with country signatories, supporting initiatives, and the metrics for tracking progress. And we aim to deliver that in the first part of 2022, and then integrate agriculture fully into the global checkpoint process, working closely with the high-level champions and others to see that delivered, and then agree the long-term accountability for the breakthrough, thinking beyond COP27. On climate shot and the global action agenda, I think that we see the allies of climate shot as having a really critical role to play in driving action and supporting delivery. And I think by working together, we can really accelerate progress in this area. A few things that we're planning to deliver over the next year as we work towards the next COP, which we hope will bring an even bigger focus on agriculture innovation. Launching a partnership to share knowledge and best practice and experiences, really capitalizing on the allies network, sharing what's happening there so that we can accelerate that process of innovation, including with members of the FACT dialogue. Some new work to develop metrics which can help us track innovation in agriculture in this area, and bringing private sector on board for that. And then helping to deliver on Glasgow Climate Pact ambitions on scaling up climate finance by formalising the Climate Shot Impact Investing Coalition, and bringing its members together, really seeking to rapidly accelerate that climate finance piece for adaptation and for nature. I think in all of that, it's going to be really important to make sure that we build on those synergies and complementarities between the policy dialogues, the facts and sustainable agriculture policy dialogues, and this piece of work on research and innovation, and really bringing those together in a joined up way.
Thanks, Rachel. And it's so exciting to be able to start the year with so much momentum, so much commitment to working together. Really exciting. So, Doris, over to you for a last word from your perspective, because what you didn't mention was, you for all the work that you did last year, you've been selected as a Young Environment Ambassador by the Bestseller Foundation. You've won a prize. Congratulations. You also get some resources with that. So, what are you planning to do in this year where there's so much interest from all our partners?
Yeah, thanks, Danush. And what you've also been mentioning, collective action. And there is also a role for youth, of course. But how? How do you, as a young person, adapt to climate change in food systems? Well, a year ago, I had no idea. And still, I don't know everything. And it can be quite scary as a young person to try and do something about it when you feel like you don't know all about it. And yeah, then it's easy to just back off and wait till you're an adult, until you're gonna do some climate action. And I want to empower young people by raising awareness in the coming months and continuing to do so by using this prize for various activities. I want to generate knowledge about the importance of youth engagement in climate adaptation for food systems, spread this knowledge through our communication channels at Climate, but also get help from our partners, and eventually get this knowledge to the young people actively by hosting an event. Thank you.
That's great, Doris. Really exciting, and looking forward to working with you on that as well. So we're a bit over time, and I would like to move on to our final speaker, who's Ayman Amin from the Egyptian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where he's the Deputy Director for the Department of Environment and Sustainable Development. And really, I mean, you've heard a lot from different stakeholders on what they are doing, what their priorities are, and I'd like to hear from you, from your perspective, sitting in the incoming presidency. What are some of your priorities around food and agriculture, and how do you see some of this energy and enthusiasm landing in Egypt at the end of this year?
Thank you so much, Danush. I would like first to congratulate the presenters on really their fruitful inputs that definitely the presidency will be using. I would like, just before to answer your question, just to highlight what we are exactly doing from now up to COP27. We have a lot of milestones, and there is like two parallel tracks. The first one, we call it 1.5 track. We will have a dedicated day for agriculture and nutrition and food systems, where we're going to discuss all the issues related to agriculture. So definitely, a lot of your presenters and their organizations will definitely will be invited in the different sessions, just to overlook the situation that we have worldwide. And we are now in this context preparing as well an Egyptian initiatives for agriculture and nutrition. This initiative is not as such, it will be something for Egypt or for a region in particular, but it will be something dedicated for the whole world. Agriculture is not only in a small region, and it's not in another. You are implementing agriculture according to your agriculture different systems around the world. So we are preparing for something like that. Still, we are crafting it. Once we had done the major outlines, definitely the international organizations and the like the FAO and the private sector, definitely they will be involved in the final formalization of such initiative in order to be presented to other countries, and we can see something it comes in the same line and to complement as well the work that it was done in Glasgow. So this is very important point to mention. On the process itself, now, of course, Egypt is sitting as a president. We are not leading G77 and China anymore in this respect, but our eyes will be focusing on implementation. We've been speaking for agriculture more than 9 years, and nothing up to now actually evolved from the process. So, what countries are looking for, especially the developing country parties, is to have implementation on the road. So this is will be one of the key issues and deliverables for COP27. I'm glad as well that I heard a lot of other Annex 1 countries who are really open to see a fruitful outcome for agriculture in COP27, and definitely we're working on that. Youth as well, they have their place. Egypt will host the Youth Forum 1 month or 1.5 months. The dates are not set yet, to carry messages for the world leaders and the negotiators themselves in the COP27. So definitely, our colleague here, uh, Doris from the Youth Environment Ambassador, definitely she will be there. You will play a major role in crafting the message that you would like us to carry forward from the presidency to the world leaders and up to the negotiators, as I said. So we have a lot of things to do. This is on the procedural level. Definitely, what we would like to see at the end, it's a country-driven process, and we hope that we can gather the whole countries on one page and to reach consensus to show the world that there is a real deliverable at the end of this roadmap. I don't want just to go into specifications. I don't want to go through the workshops, what exactly need to be delivered. This is once again, is up to the parties, but definitely the spirit that I had left when we left, I witnessed it when we left Glasgow, that we would like to have something tangible at the end of the process. This is wasn't only the developing countries, but as well Annex 1, like I had said. So I'm very optimistic, and I'm happy to work with you together, Danush, and your presenters forward in crafting the initiative that it will be carried in COP27. Back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ayman. I'm so happy and so excited by hearing that. And in one word, I would just summarize that I feel you're developing an inclusive program of work, bringing together different stakeholders. What you mentioned about youth, what you mentioned about opportunities for the private sector, international organizations, and that's really great because there are lots of people watching this from around the world, and you're offering them a seat at the table to help shape that initiative provide their inputs into that food and nutrition and food systems day. So that's great. That's a great starting point, and we really look forward to working with you to make sure that COP27 is a success for the presidency, and making sure that that initiative that you're developing can also succeed based on the collective networks and resources. Thank you so much, Amin, for joining us and giving us this great start to the year. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and I look forward to working with all of you in the lead up to COP27 in Egypt. And once again, thanks to our co-host, the Netherlands Food Partnership and ICRI project of the CGR funded by the World Bank, for co-convening this event. And I hope you found it useful, and have a good rest of your day.